Hello. Despite all the uncertainty, it is likely that COVID vaccines will give us protection from the variant Omicron. In fact, tonight the chief executive of BioNTech told Reuters the vaccine they developed with Pfizer will give substantial protection from severe disease. But how many times since last year have scientists told us that we only emerge from this pandemic together? It is a practical as well as a moral obligation to vaccinate the developing world, because if we don't, other variants will appear and they can't be stopped. Within 5 days of Omicron being discovered, and I use the word discovered, in South Africa, we now know it is present in 20 countries. In fact, it was present in the Netherlands and in Scotland well before the South Africans had even told us it existed. So we need a different approach, one that allows developing nations to manufacture and distribute the vaccine themselves. And tonight, finally, we have a breakthrough in that fight for greater vaccine equity. The South African company Aspen Pharmacare tells us it has agreed a deal with Johnson & Johnson to license the J&J vaccine in Africa, which they will sell under their own name. And just before we came on air, I spoke to the company's senior executive, Stavros Nicolaou. Stavros, a lot of people have campaigned long and hard for this. It's very exciting news for Africa. Tell us about the deal and what you hope it will look like.
Christian, firstly, thanks very much for having me. Today's announcement is a real game changer for the African continent. As you correctly point out, the continent has been characterized by gross vaccine inequality, uneven distribution. Africa has only received 3% or less of the world's global COVID vaccine supplies. Today's announcement, the partnership between Johnson & Johnson and Aspen, which is in the form of a licensing agreement, is set to change all of that. In short, this now means Africa has its own vaccine. Aspen licenses the intellectual property and will produce its own vaccine under the name of AspenAvax, and this will become readily available to the continent and significantly widening access of what has up until now been a largely inaccessible supply.
Well, spell that out for me, Stavros. What are you able to supply at the moment? What do you think the difference will be next year?
So right now, Christian, we're in a slightly different arrangement with Johnson & Johnson. We're in a contract manufacturing relationship with them. This is the next evolution, if I can call it that, of the current arrangement. And we have up to now manufactured 120 million doses of Johnson & Johnson COVID vaccine. That's at present. What is set to change, of course, is that we are increasing our capacities. By Q1 next year, we will have an annualized capacity of 450 million doses, all of which we can dedicate to the African continent. Of course, the other big difference between contract manufacturing and licensing is that Aspen will have full control of the allocation and distribution of these vaccines, and these would all, of course, as I said earlier, go to the African continent.
Let's talk about Omicron, because you're taking over the licensing at a rather precarious moment. Does the Johnson & Johnson vaccine, are your scientists doing any work on it? Are you now in the lab looking at how it's going to be affected by the new variant?
Christian, we're dependent on Johnson & Johnson to do that. I mean, they do the research and development, the innovation, and there's a lot of anecdotal comments about Omicron, how more contagious and possibly virulent it might be. I think it's too early for anyone to say what the real picture is going to look like. I think we need to give this a couple of weeks. What we do know for certain, though, is that if you vaccinate significant swathes of the population, you're likely to break the chain of transmission. And if you do that, you also mitigate the variants that begin to manifest. With these variants, of course, you start seeing surges, as we are presently seeing around the globe. So I think that we need to give us a few more weeks. Our focus is very much getting as many vaccines manufactured as possible and jabs in arms, that is the best way for us to overcome this, what has been catastrophic pandemic.
I want to put up some numbers for our viewers on the province where the scientists detected the variant. I'm saying detected and discovered because I know you've got some views on where it might have originated, but that was what it looked like 3 weeks ago, 125. If we spin forward 3 weeks, you see that actually the figure is starting to rise up to 142 2 weeks ago, and then up to 234 last week. So a doubling of numbers of hospitalizations. Should that be cause for concern?
Christian, I think firstly, let me say that we were able to swiftly identify this variant through our South African genomic surveilling and sequencing capabilities. But it doesn't mean that this variant emanated in South Africa. There's now good evidence to demonstrate that this variant existed in parts of Europe. Today I heard about Scotland, in fact. And none of these were patients that travelled to South Africa, and in fact many of these instances preceded the discovery of this particular variant. I think what is relevant is that we are seeing a surge in cases globally, including in Europe and South Africa. In South Africa, we're on the cusp of a fourth wave, regrettably. And I think that we are starting to see increased hospitalization, but certainly in South Africa, this is attributable to patients largely that are unvaccinated. Again, indicating that we need to vaccinate as many people as quickly as possible to get over this.
There is some evidence, though, and we've heard from doctors in South Africa today that the symptoms are mild. There is this highly optimistic scenario of a late epidemic mutation that, yes, is extremely contagious, but while displacing Delta does less harm, that that it doesn't multiply in the body just the same way that Delta does. Could this actually, perversely, be the variant we've been waiting for?
As you know, these viruses up or down mutate. They largely up mutate to try and survive themselves. As you try and pin them down, they mutate. Eventually, when they start fizzling out, they down mutate. And I'm not sure that we're in a position right now to pass any opinion. I think it's too early in the process, quite frankly. We are probably and anecdotally experiencing milder symptoms, but what one also knows is when you're at the start of a wave or a surge with a new variant, it's usually the younger population that gets infected first. And of course, they have a much more resilient and robust immune system. So the short answer, Christian, is I feel it's a little early in the process to understand exactly what is happening. And, please God, it is, contagious but less virulent than the previous ones, and it is starting to fizzle out. We'll be extremely happy if that is in fact the case.
Stavros Nicolaou, many congratulations on the deal you signed today. We look forward to talking to you some more on the programme. Thank you.